is up, everyone? This is Dan from Dmpaints, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to varnish your alcohol ink artworks, and this is super important to ensure the longevity of your piece, of your artwork, especially if it is one that is precious to you and especially if it is one that you are selling. So these steps, this process is super important. I'm going to be going over some frequently asked questions in regards to spraying your inks and just like all the what if questions that you may have, as well as going through the process with you at the very end of the video. And let's get started. The very first thing that you're going to need is your Dmpaintsinfo varnish spray. So this is by Krylon and it is a setting spray. The second thing that you are going to need is your UV resistant spray. I'm going to talk about this first because it goes on first. So when you have an artwork, you want to make sure that you are setting your alcohol inks. So this means just literally setting the inks in place so that they don't move. So this is what this does. I recommend 2 coats of this before you go on with your UV resistant spray. The inks can move around and they can reactivate if you put the UV resistant on first. So go in with this first. You want to have 2 coats, as I said, minimum, and then you should be good to go in with your UV resistant spray. Now this is really, they're both equally important, but what this ensures is that your artwork has some UV protection because alcohol inks are not light fast. So what light fast dyes or pigments are is that they are resistant to UV rays and they are resistant to fading. Unfortunately, alcohol inks, as beautiful as they are not resistant to this. So that means you have to add on that extra layer of protection to really ensure that your colors just don't fade over time, especially again, if this is artwork that you are gifting or that you are selling, you really want to make sure that it is really protected against natural sunlight. So you want to make sure that the UV resistant, you are spraying at least 2 to 3 coats. That is my personal recommendation. Again, I have looked at forums, I've looked at other tutorials and spoken to other artists, and this kind of generally tends to be the amount. You just want to make sure that you are kind of covering that surface area as well as you possibly can. And I think with a couple of coats, you're kind of ensuring that no space is really left bare. So total, I would do 2 of the Dmpaintsinfo varnish spray and then 3 of the UV resistant spray, making 5 coats in total. And again, these are both the Krylon brand, and you might have to do a little bit of your own research if these brands are not available in your country. However, I think the importance is that you have a setting spray like a varnish spray and then you have a UV resistant spray. This is a great question. If you are going in with resin, you might not necessarily need both sprays, but I do recommend that you use the Dmpaintsinfo varnish spray, not the UV resistant necessarily. So the setting spray you might want to use, because what I have personally had happen is do a beautiful artwork, and not to say that it turns ugly or anything like that, but the inks would bleed under the resin because they're not set with anything. So you might get like some color changes if you're applying resin right on top of your artwork without setting it. I've noticed that this happens with my purples. They kind of go to like a magenta pink sort of color, and then I've noticed that this happens with the teal. It has turned to like a green before. So it's super important that you set it so that when you have your resin on top, it doesn't cause any bleeding or anything like that. The UV resistant, I would say just make sure that the resin that you're using has built-in UV resistance. If that's the case, I don't personally see the need to go in with a UV spray twice. So I would say yes to the Dmpaintsinfo varnish and then not necessarily to the UV spray. If you're using UV resistant glass, I would still go ahead and do the spray. And just simply because you might change your mind, or the collector that has your artwork might change their mind in terms of where they want their piece framed or how they want it framed. And not everybody opts for glass. You know, sometimes you could have like a matte and just the frame and just showcase your inks directly as is. So I would say, yeah, even if it's going behind glass, you just never know down the line if you maybe want to change up that style for your artwork. And it really doesn't hurt to have that extra layer of protection. So I would say, yes, still do the UV resistant spray. Another question. I would personally say between each coat, maybe roughly around 30 minutes or so. It doesn't matter if you wait longer really, it's just that you don't want to give it less time and then the spray hasn't fully set. You just want to make sure that it is pretty dry to the touch before going in with your next coat. If you are spraying your artworks inside, it is super important that you are, one, in a well-ventilated area, and two, that you have some sort of protection, respiratory protection. So I use a half-face respirator. I use a 3M respirator. I believe that this is in the size small, so you can just check it out on their website. They offer small, medium, large, I think. And then these are organic vapor cartridges. These are the ones that you are going to need specifically for these types of things like resin and then like the spray and whatever. Like these are the ones. I got these off of Amazon, and then you replace these about every 6 months. This thing is for life, so that is amazing. And I'm just going to show you how this goes on. It has a little strap there, super easy. And then you just take these and then clip it. This thing is amazing because literally you just breathe and you can't smell anything, which on top of it just being irritating to smell, you actually are protecting your lungs, right? But it is really important, especially if this is something that you're doing long-term. Honestly, health is no joke. So please, if you are doing it inside, well-ventilated areas, so like you can have windows open, fan going, I would just be a little bit wary of dust there. And then the respirator. If you are doing it outside, I just want to say maybe try to spray your work outside and bring it inside as quickly as possible just to prevent any dust from outside. Or if you can cover it with some sort of plastic bin, like if your work is small enough, I would definitely recommend doing that because again, you want to avoid dust, especially if your artwork is very light color. So you don't notice little particles when the artwork is a little bit darker, but unfortunately, if you have an artwork, let's say that has like these light spots, for example, maybe like in the middle, you wouldn't notice it as much, but on the outer edges, you're gonna notice these like little dust things that have stuck to your artwork and you can't really get them out and it's just a headache. So yeah, just be wary of dust is what I would say. Try to cover your artwork. And those are the tips I have for the frequently asked questions. If you have any other questions, just leave it down in the comments below and I will definitely answer you as soon as possible. So let's go outside now and actually spray our artwork.
All right, so I decided to do this process outside. So you just want to take a lint-free cloth or anything like that and just make sure that you remove all the dust from the surface of your artwork. You want to make sure also that you're not doing this on a windy day because the spray could kind of just be flying all over the place and then you might not be ensuring full coverage on your piece. You want to make sure that you give the can a really good shake, maybe for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then just apply even coats of the spray onto your artwork. Again, I bring my artwork inside for about 30 minutes between each spray. So I repeated the KMR varnish process twice, and now I'm going in with my UV resistant spray. What you want to make sure definitely is that you are holding the can far enough so that you kind of get like an even coverage because you don't want streaks in your artwork. You kind of got to find that sweet spot. I would say maybe like about 6 inches away from the artwork would be appropriate. And this is the final product. I really hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you found it informative. And if you have any other questions, again, please leave that down in the comments below. And I'll see you next week. Bye!